In this tutorial video, I will quickly show you how you can add more question sets to your game. First of all, you need to import that Unity package that you can get by extracting this here. I already done that, and now you have a folder in your assets which is called Remato Boost Assets, and in there you find the game text grid. What you need to do is you need to drag this example scene over to your world scene. Drag the game in, right click, remove, don't save, and now the game is in your world. If you want, you can reposition the game wherever you want. Alright. Now under this you find the dice setup. Don't move this. Instead, if you want to move the dice object instead, together with the respawn position. Okay. Now let's quickly take a look into the game. For this I'm using Cyan Emo to emulate VRChat in Unity. Okay, you see you have a toggle button that you can also remove and replace with a different button, whatever you want. It works with my physical buttons, it also works with every UI button. It is very important that you do not toggle the game directly and use the button instead. Okay. Now you see there's a small description already translated to Japanese. Thank you very much, Tony Levis, for this. And there's a reset button to reset the game locally. And there's an option to skip already answered questions, which you can toggle off or on. The example scene already includes 2 question sets, but the one is in English and the other one is just the translated version of this question set to Japanese. And there you can also see a panel that shows you the question set that you currently have selected and the current question. You can remove this panel if you want, just delete the object and that's it. Okay. Now you pick up the dice, you click and you see the dice turns red. That means it's armed, and then you can drop it. And it will randomly spin the dice to make the dice showing more fair. And now you see the question lights up. And you can also see the question there. Now to switch to another question set, I only need to push this button and that's it. Now we have a different question set loaded. To make multiple languages work, this is really just having like 2 different question sets, but the only difference is that they have the same amount and the same order. Let me show you how this looks in editor. As you can see, this is a button that you can set the text to whatever you want. And then you need to assign the game object where the script of the game is on, set it to Udon behavior.send custom event, set it to editor and runtime to also be able to test it in editor. And then you set this set question set 0 for the first question set in your array. Now for the second button, you just set it to the second question set, which is because it's 0 based, this is the 1. Now if we click on this game object and we have a look at all the options that we have, there you can also see that we have an array of question sets. Now as you can see, there's the element 0 and there's the element 1. Because this is a Japanese one, we also have a different font, which is this one here, which is able to display Japanese characters, while this font is not able to do that, but overall looks nicer for English ones. Let's take a look at one of the example question sets. Now this is just a text file, so you can open it with any editor that you want. You can see that each line in this document represents a question. You can have as many questions as you want, and I recommend that you have at least as many questions as you have tiles. Now the first line here includes some information for the game. The first one is the name of the font asset. Now as you may remember, we have an array of fonts. You do not need to put in as many fonts as you have question sets, you only need to put in any font that you want once. And you can see this font has a specific name. And this name is what you need to put here. Then you put a semicolon. And you put the number 7. The number 7 in this example here represents the line spacing. But this number here is divided by 10. So 7 will give you a line spacing of 0.7. You can change this number if you want a different line spacing. And then the third element is the name of the question set. And that is only to be displayed on this here if you select the question set. So you can also have the author name if you want and the language. You can really put whatever you want to be displayed here. Now let's take a look at the translated version. As you can see, the translated version uses a Unicode font and a different line spacing of 1. It also has a different title. However, if you compare this, they have the same questions in the same order. This allows to have two languages for the same question set. Now in each world instance, the question set order on the tiles is randomized, but it is the same for every player in the same instance. Even if you change a question set, as long as they have the same amount of questions, the order will be the same. Okay, now let's try to add another question set. I already created a text file, which I can show you here. So all I did is essentially create a new text document and put in some random questions that I found on Google. Okay, we need to add the first line, and I will just steal it from the example question set. Okay, so let's call this one stolen questions. Let's not put myself as the author. Alright, you should put the question set in the same folder, but it doesn't matter. Now all you need to do is you need to drag this one here onto the array of the question set. Note how I do not need to put the font again because it's already here in the array. The element is the second one. Now what is important is that you first add an API endpoint in the script. For this, you double click here onto the script. Now inside the script, you will find an area that says add more question sets here. You expand this and you see there are already two methods to set the question sets. This is used by the external buttons. There's also an example on how the next question set method would look like, but this one is commented out. So what we can do is we can just add another one of those. Set it to 2 and the 2 here as well. We can also do this with the 3 to have a fourth question set. Save it, and then we can go back to Unity. You will see that this is compiling again. Let Unity compile this, and now it's finished. We need to add another button to be able to switch to that question set. You can see that all question set buttons are here in that array. So let's generate a new one. For this, we just copy this button here. Press Ctrl D while having it selected. Okay, now we call this stolen. Expand it, select the button, and rename the question set. Now you want to move this somewhere else, so wait, select the root object of that button and move it like here. Let's also expand the menu canvas a bit. You can do this by changing the width of that canvas. And we will also extend the box collider. Okay. Now the only thing left is that we set the question set ID to be 2. Okay, that's it. It's already assigned because I copied the button. Now as you can see, the element 2 is now selected by the button, is assigned here as the element 2. And now we only need to assign the button object to the button states array. Okay, it wants me to select the root of the button. And now we also have it here as the element 2. Okay, let's save the scene and let's see if we can change to that question set. Okay, you can see the English question set is loaded first, but I can just change to the new question set. Now you will see one thing, and that is that some questions in that example are simply too big to fit onto those. We could change this by making the font smaller, but instead I would recommend that you just make the questions smaller. In general, it shouldn't be too hard to make them small enough to fit on this. What you could also do, you could change to the squared ones that in general would fit that quite nicely. However, even if your questions are too long, you will always be able to read them here. Okay, let me quickly show you how you can also add or change the prefabs. So let's say you don't want to start a tile to be like a paw, and instead you want it to be squared. Or let's make it a circle. All you need to do is drag it over here, and now the start is a circle. And let's do the same for the finish tile. And the regular one, let's make this one squared. You can also open the prefab, and there you will see that they have a certain font size for the number and for the question. Now this font size is set to 1, and I would recommend that you keep it as 1. Okay, so what I just did is I set the scale to half of the question element, and I doubled the width and the height of the question. This will allow much bigger questions to be in, but it's also really hard to read, so I don't really recommend doing that. Let's take a look at how this looks. Okay, so as you can see, we now have a round start, a round finish, and square tiles. The text of the questions is a lot smaller, so now you will be able to fit really long questions in here if you need that for your game. Obviously you could also make the scale a little bit bigger and just play around with the values. This will allow you to fit in whatever text size you need. There's a lot of other stuff that you can change here. You can change how those tiles are randomly slanted, or how the zigzag is also slanted. You can also change the size of the grid and a lot of other stuff, including all the colors. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this small tutorial on how to add another question set. And keep in mind, it would be nice if you could add the same question sets for both languages, but you don't need that. You can also just add more English question sets or more Japanese question sets. They don't need to have the same category. Those can be completely different essentially. It's only really nice to have two languages at the same time, but it doesn't need to be like that. Just keep in mind that users maybe expect to be able to change to a different language and just have it translated instead of playing a different question set overall. You can find this asset for your own VRChat world in the link in the description.